Hey guys, what's going on? It's your boy Luke here for another weekly PGA DFS live stream. What we're going to do here is we're going to get you prepared for lock this afternoon. We're going to go over some of the weather for this weekend. We're going to go through my PGA projections, some any live questions that you guys have. Make sure to throw them down in the chat. And of course, we'll finish it up with some strategy talk. So without any delay, let's hop right into the weather for this week. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. So this is going to be for Shiba Tokyo, just in general. I wasn't able to find a weather station any bit closer, but getting an idea for the weather in the city in general is going to give us a good idea. So the golf course is just outside the city, if you guys didn't know. So first and foremost, this is the weather right now. Just want to go ahead and let you guys know there's a gale advisory in the area. So what that means is that there's some super strong winds, enough so that they're putting out a severe weather alert. And that lasts the whole way until 6 a.m. And they're teeing off today right around 6:30 a.m. So first and foremost, there might be a delay if there's been any damage to the golf course. But even more so than that, you could still have winds well into 15, 20 miles an hour still going into the golf tournament. So going to go over here. Let's go to the next day. Let's look at tomorrow's hour by hour forecast here. So we can see in the morning, it's still going to be cloudy. But what we can see is the wind. So we're going to click here at 7 a.m. I got 7 to 9 mile an hour wind gusts. That's not that bad. 8 a.m., 8 to 10. Let's go more towards midday. You can see there's a good amount of wind, right? 12 mile an hour gusts. Those aren't anything that are going to kill golfers, but a lot more than people expected this time of year. It was more than what we had last time around. Essentially, it was extremely calm. And see, towards the afternoon wave, starting to get wind gusts up to 14 miles an hour. So at the beginning of the week, we were a little bit more focused on golfers that were high in birdie or better percentage. We thought this was going to be a little bit more of a birdie fest, but with that weather in mind, knowing that there's going to be a bit of wind in play, probably going to be a winning score closer to maybe 17, 18 under par. So I've kind of adjusted that in my modeling. I've taken birdie or better percentage and kind of nerfed it a little bit, have buffed up around the green. I mean, these are small greens to begin with. They were already going to miss a good amount of them. It was already something that was a little bit boosted, but even more so with this wind. And it's something I can't necessarily quantify. I haven't found a good way to do this at this point, but good wind players. So when I'm building my lineups, I'm going to do plenty of them by hand. If they're going to take a bias towards some of the guys I know play better in the wind. So again, there's not really a good way to quantify that at this point. I've tried using apex height, but there's a lot of noise with that stat. That stat's usually only calculated for one shot per round. They take the apex height on one of the random iron shots. The players don't even know it beforehand, and that ends up being their true quote unquote apex height. So it's a very misleading stat. I was going to say a little bit of a misleading stat, but it's an extremely misleading stat. Let's hop right into the player pool here, though. Let's talk about some of the guys I do think are going to play well in these type of conditions. And I have updated my model. I've also updated my player pool to reflect a lot of these type of changes. First and foremost, Collin Morikawa. He's going to be my biggest fade of the week. You guys saw my video earlier on the week. You know exactly why that's the case. He's somebody who tends to be a little bit worse on greens that are undulating, especially greens that are fast. We've seen him perform poorly in the past at the PGA Championship. Not the one that he won, but the one at Kiawah Island. That was a Pete Dye special that had a lot of undulation. The one over there at Harding Park, it was a municipal golf course. It was extremely flat, complete opposite. If you take a look at where he struggled in the past as well, he hasn't putted very well at the Masters. He also hasn't putted well at golf courses like the Memorial and whatnot. He just hasn't been able to find that putter. If he found the putter at the Memorial on any of his trips there, he probably walks away with multiple wins. I mean, it's a very good golf course for his game, especially his off-the-tee accuracy, that kind of thing. So for me, him not having multiple wins there at this point is actually a bad thing. So Collin Morikawa, I don't like the course fit here, right? He was on very familiar greens last week in Las Vegas at the CJ Cup. Not only were they very flat, they had nuanced breaks to them. So if you had course knowledge, if you were somebody who knew all the little intricacies to these greens, it was very easy to make a lot of putts. I mean, we saw Maverick McNeely gain a shit ton of strokes putting. Same thing with Collin Morikawa. Also, a few of the other guys in the area, like Xander, Schauffele, and whatnot, they all gained strokes putting because they played here before. It's just definitely a huge edge to that. And by the end of the week, the most telling story of those greens is the first day, the average shots gained putting was right around 0.7 strokes per round. By Sunday, they were making it at 1.3 shots gained per round average. So they figured out those greens, guys. Everyone was gaining on them last week. It was just, if you were even a remotely competent putter, you made your hay last week with the putter. That's not going to be the case this week. You're dealing with greens that are a lot more difficult. Everyone's going to be missing putts this week. It's going to be the opposite problem. You're going to be dealing with a lower shots gained putting average for this type of a field. You're going to be dealing with a lot of 3 to 4 foot putts as a comebacker. If you guys saw my hole by hole breakdown on my course breakdown, You guys saw that every single green here is sloped from back to front. So if any of your guys are having trouble with their distance control, they're overshooting greens, that kind of thing, the Bryson DeChambeau special, launch a green by 15 yards, that kind of thing. You're looking at bogey at best. I mean, these are extremely undulating greens. To hit a pitch shot to even 5 to 10 feet would be a good shot. So again, winning score, I think it's be closer to 16 to 18 under par. I mean, I think that would be a very good score to win at here. That honestly might come in closer to maybe 12, 13 under par. If we get worse conditions on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, then yeah, we're gonna get even higher score, something closer to 12, 13 under par. So keep that in mind. Somebody I do like on these type of greens though is Will Zalatoris. Just think about the Masters. Fast, undulating, bent grass greens. That is exactly what we have at Augusta National. And I'm not saying that these greens here are Augusta National-like or anything like that, but they definitely have quite a bit of undulation. You're going to be dealing with 3 to 4 foot breakers, even for like some 10-foot putts. It's going to be absolutely nuts. It's going to be wing foot-esque. So obviously, Will Zalatoris, the first time we ever saw him at a major championship, top 10 at wing foot. That was a golf course with undulating, bent grass greens. And I don't want to look too much into that, but every single time Will Zalatoris has played on fast, undulating, bent grass greens, he's finished in the top 10. There's 3 instances of that on tour. Again, he doesn't have a massive sample size. This guy is a relatively new guy in the block, but that's an impressive sample size if you ask me. Obviously, if you use the eye test, you're able to watch a lot of his shots at the Masters, at the US Open, that kind of thing, more than filled up the eye test. I mean, the guy's obviously very creative. He's one of the worst putters on tour typically, but anytime you get a golf course where everybody's going to start missing putts because they're so hard to read, because you're dealing with 3 to 4 footers, maybe he just thrives in those circumstances because he's already missing all of those putts. So I really like him this week. He was somebody who I didn't have as a core play, but again, if you guys saw my sleepers video, if I did a core play video right now, he would be by far my favorite play on the slate. I still like Hideki. If you guys saw my core plays video, he was my spin up option. I don't know. I'm all right. I'm all right with it, right? He's a hometown guy. He finished in the top 3 last time around there in 2019. Obviously has a good skill set fit for the golf course. Hell of a ball striker. That's what we're looking for here. Also somebody who's good on hard greens. So we've seen the same thing in the past as like Will Zalatoris. I don't think it's quite the same type of effect. Obviously a much larger sample size. So it's not 3 of 3. It's not 30 of 30 tournaments where he's finished in the top 10 or anything like that. But if you run a regression model and we take a look at him on fast, undulating bent grass greens, he is a plus player in terms of shots gained putting. So you like to see that. Typically one of the worst putters on tour. So to see him as a positive putter in those type of instances, it's very attractive. So you can see in terms of a recent form rank, he is actually number 1 in this field, which is great to see. In terms of course that he is top 5. So using this, it's usually using just shots gained putting here on bent grass. So you can see that's why I have this metric over here. I don't have it adjusting for the fast undulating greens. But if we do that, this shots gained putting goes from just over positive at 0.06 shots gained putting ground to right around 0.27. So it's quite a large jump. It's nearly a quarter of a stroke difference per round. So I wanted to throw that out there because that's not reflected there on the spreadsheet. But something in my own modeling when I'm doing on the side, I am incorporating for my lineup building. Joaquin Niemann over here, you can see $9,900. So here's somebody, you can see over here says pricier than I like, also chalkier. But I really looked into some of his splits, especially on bent grass, and it is by far his best surface. He also tends to do a lot of his best work at hard golf courses. And at the beginning of the week, I didn't expect this to be a hard golf course, right? We were expecting this to be a relative birdie fest, especially if the wind conditions were down. But now understanding that the wind isn't going to be down at any point this weekend, that large cell that's causing the gale force winds right now is a seasonal type of thing. I mean, apparently they're dealing with those type of winds all the time. I don't know if it's just that time of the year where it's getting into winter, that kind of thing. I'm no Japan climate specialist or anything. I'm definitely not going to pretend that I am. But they're going to be dealing with wind all weekend, from what I've seen on the day-by-day forecast, that kind of thing. So Joaquin Niemann is going to be better at these harder type of tracks. Another thing I really like about Niemann is that he's from Chile, right? He's used to these really windy conditions. He's South America. It's just kind of like Florida. It's that tropical climate. You deal with these windy conditions all the time. Also somebody who flights the ball low. I mean, you guys have I don't know if you've seen him hit his wedges before. His wedges don't have an apex height higher than most people, maybe 5 or 6 irons. It's a very low ball flight, somebody who uses a lot of spin and is able to control his distances very well as a result. He gets a huge bonus in these winds, obviously. The hardest thing to hit in windy conditions is your wedges. It's not really your driver. You're used to curving the driver, right? Riding it on the wind. Same thing with your long irons, right? You're keeping it below the wind typically. It's at least not going to bat it out of the air, but with your wedges, the wind can just play absolute games with it, right? You can have your ball move 10, 15 yards offline, that kind of thing. So guys like Niemann that hit low wedges, and that is extremely rare. Honestly, I can't think of anyone on tour that hits it even remotely close as low as he does with his wedges. That's a huge advantage. So a little bit more of a nuanced take right there, but somebody I will be playing this weekend. And I'll just remind you guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to put them down in the chat. I'll get to them whenever I see them. Cool. So let's get over to a few more of the picks here. Ricky Fowler. I can't resist, guys. He's probably going to be a little bit higher owned than I have him at right here. I'm at 10.7% right now. That was as of yesterday. I'm going to run another ownership projection, probably right around noon today. So for anybody on the Golf Patreon, you guys will have that updated. Also, probably going to try and update this shots gained bent grass number here to the shots gained putting bent grass on undulating fast greens as well. So I'm gonna try and change that. I'm gonna try and update that for you guys. So for anybody on the Patreon, look forward to that this afternoon. And I'll just remind you guys, if you are looking to join the Patreon, that's how you can get direct access to all this data. Link will be in the description. It's just $8 for the month. It's 25 cents a week. You have absolutely no excuse not to join. Link will be in the description for that. Ricky Fowler up here at 10.7. He's somebody who, again, I just can't resist this week. He led the field in tee to green last week in lost strokes putting. And those were on relatively simple bent grass greens. Ricky is typically one of the best bent grass green putters in the world, but he tends to do better at harder greens, on complex greens, like TPC Sawgrass, for example, right? Or he won the Players Championship. He's able to use that creativity. He's somebody who's in a very aggressive putter, tends to see his lines very well. I really have a feeling about Ricky Fowler. You can see just a pure bent grass putter, getting nearly half a stroke per round on bent grass. One of the best putters all time on bent grass. I have a really weird feeling about Ricky Fowler. Last week, he was one of our value picks, and I had a hunch, right? I said, like, if there's any golf course where he's going to go out and have a big week, it's going to be at the CJ Cup. And I have that same type of feeling again, but a little bit more strongly so. And he almost won last time. So I just want to say that, okay? I'm going to have a lot of them. And it could burn me, but the metrics look really good. The familiarity looks really good. I literally cannot find a reason to fade Ricky Fowler. Let's go down to Sibu Kim, $9,600. He was one of my sleeper picks of the week. Really like him at just hard. So at any golf course where putting is not going to be a big deal, right? Where everyone's missing putts, Sibu Kim just becomes one of the most attractive plays on the slate. Obviously, he always deals with motivation issues. So if he's not making a ton of putts, he's going to be extremely frustrated. But if he's looking up at the leaderboard and the average score, maybe the winning score of the round is going to be like 4 or 5 under par, he's not going to kill himself quite as much, right? He's going to take it a little bit easier on himself, that kind of thing. Siwoo Kim, I am going to be playing this week, especially at just 8.4% ownership. Could even come in lower than that. A lot of people are going to try and squeeze an EVR. He finally had another good week last week. Somebody that we touted, of course. And then up here, Ricky Fowler. A lot of people are going to play Ricky Fowler. That's why I think it's going to come in well above this 10.7% ownership. Probably closer to like 16, 17%. Probably even going to drop Joaquin Niemann a little bit lower, which is going to make him an even better play. So let's talk about these two. I'm very meh on Keegan Bradley and Eric Van Rooyen. Not necessarily sure that I'm playing either of them. You can see right around 7.5% ownership on both of those guys. EVR was a play for us last week because he's very good on bank grass. He's good in terms of a birdie or better percentage player. Makes a ton of birdies, tons of eagles. He's extremely aggressive. But at harder golf courses, he really struggles. I mean, just think of the PGA Championship at Kiowa, him smashing the tee marker because he was going to miss the cut. Yeah, he's a little crybaby, and he's not going to take the wind well this weekend. Let's just say that. Keegan Bradley, also somebody who I was considering playing at the beginning of the week. He gained strokes putting last week, and I was on bent grass at the CJ Cup, but we're getting much more difficult greens this week. And you can make the same argument I made with Siwoo Kim, same argument I made with Hideki Matsuyama, Will Zalatoris, that nobody's going to be making putts this week. So maybe you do want to play somebody like Keegan Bradley. And I understand that. It's just the recent form for me. If we take a look at it, he's the number 37th ranked golfer in the field. Good course fit, though. So you can see as of right now, I don't have him down as a fade or anything like that. It's just whether I can fit him into my player pool. So obviously we're dealing with a smaller player pool. It's only 78 golfers. So I'll likely probably have to add him into the pool. Just not somebody who was one of my first picks or anything like that. Not anybody that I'd go out and recommend for you guys to use or anything. Maverick McNeely, though, is somebody I would recommend. He's very good at courses with small greens. Just historically very good at the Farmers Insurance Open over there at Pebble Beach. But on top of that, Maverick McNeely, also somebody who's good on bent grass. He's one of the best bent grass putters in this entire field. You see gaining 0.4 of a stroke per round on bent grass greens. Just in general, somebody who's a relatively good putter, longer off the tee than a lot of people give him credit for. Just needs to bring the irons. That's typically the inconsistent part of his game. He's really really consistent off the tee and putting. But the approach play can kind of come and go. And last week at the CJ Cup, he had everything but the approach play. Ended up posting, I believe, a top 25 finish. Ended up having like a double bogey and a triple bogey on his final 9 holes of the golf tournament. He was in the top 10 for quite some time. So the finish looked a lot worse than it really was. He was in command of his game for, let's say, 69 of the 72 holes this weekend. Had those like 3 or 4 huge blow-up holes. I like going back to him. You can see a lot of the field is as well. One of the higher owned options in this range, but we're doing a direct comparison here with Cameron Tringale. Not only is he somebody who is coming in with relatively similar form, you can see 14 to 15 right there. Just in terms of a course fit historically, you can see my model doesn't love Maverick McNeely, but we know that he's good on these courses with small greens. You know he's good on bent grass. You know that he's good at these shorter golf courses, just like we see at Pebble Beach. I think this could be a little bit misleading here, this metric right here. So even though on paper Tringale might be a better course fit, just using logic, just obviously using what I know as a golf handicapper at this point, Maverick McNeely a much better play in my opinion. You know, Cameron Tringale also somebody who has a very hard time finishing. We've seen it time and time again. Will be a first round leader, somebody who goes, shoots 6-7 under, is leading by a stroke or two after the first round. And by Saturday morning, he's completely out of contention. So I want nothing to do with Tringale. I've gotten burned enough there. Speaking of getting burned, and somebody I'm a little bit more excited to go to here. And we got a comment down here. I had to laugh at here. I'm waiting for a breakdown of all the Japanese players in the tournament. Yeah, fucking right, dude. Yeah, I'm not fucking breaking down those Japanese guys. There's a few of them I know about. All those random Japan tour guys. My quote unquote analysis is gonna be don't fucking play them. That's going to be about it. There are a few of them like Kanaya. There's a few of them out there that we've obviously seen before I'll talk about, but a majority of those Japanese tour guys, just stay the fuck away from. Emiliano Grillo, core play. So we talked about him in our core plays video. He's good on these small greens. He's extremely precise with his approach play. The reason why I say he always burns me, he's a horrible putter, right? You can see that I'm playing some horrible putters in this field. You know, if everybody's going to be missing putts, maybe Grillo ends up getting by with that ball striking ability. And again, we're expecting this to be relatively windy. He's also somebody used to these windy conditions. A guy from South America, Argentina, used to very windy conditions. I essentially compare that type of climate to the one they have down in Jupiter, down in Florida. So there's guys that are used to those windy conditions, essentially just 45 minutes from my house. It's fucking 25, 30 mile an hour winds essentially every single day. They're going to be at a huge advantage here. So just thinking about some of the Florida guys up here, do we even have any in the field? He's not that I can think of, right? We know Maverick McNeely is a West Coast guy. I have no idea about like Siwoo and these guys. Ricky, right? So Ricky is a South Florida guy. He's definitely going to be used to the wind. He's played well at the TPC Sawgrass. It's a little bit more protected by the trees there at TPC Sawgrass, but it still gets a little bit windy. I have no idea where Fleetwood's from. I know he stays in America. I know he's from England, obviously, but he stays in America for a lot. I think he's in Florida. Zalatoris, he's not from Florida. All right, these two are from Vegas, so they're not used. They could be used to wind, but when you're from Vegas, I just know this from experience. You don't golf when it's windy. You go down the strip, you hang out with friends. It's just not something you do because when it gets windy in Vegas, it's like 40, 50 mile an hour winds. You literally can't play golf. So I just wanted to go through that a little bit. It's interesting, right? It's not anything we can quantify, you know, where someone's from and how they play in the wind, but something that I at least use as a tiebreaker, something like that, right? If I have two players that are extremely close in terms of their modeling, one's from Palm Beach, one's from Denver, something like that, and we got windy conditions, I'll play the guy from Palm Beach. Fuck it. Let's go down here to Mackenzie Hughes here at $9,000. It's just like a crazy price to me. Like it's just mind-boggling. It's probably just because it has a 9 next to it. This guy was $8,900. He probably wouldn't be saying the same thing about his price. So for me, I had him down as like an immediate fade. You can see he's still down in my pool as a fade. If he's coming in closer to like 2-3% ownership, my last sim I did, so just before we got on here, actually had him at 3.75% ownership. That he actually might be a play. He's somebody who's extremely good at hard golf courses. He always seems to contend at the U.S. Open. He tends to contend at all these major championships like the Open Championship. Shows up at the Memorial every year. Literally only shows up at golf courses that are difficult. So if we're going to get windy conditions, if this golf course is going to play with some teeth this time around, if we're going to see a winning score closer to 10, 12 under par, he could be the exact kind of golfer that we're looking for, which is a little bit scary to me. Obviously, it was just a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction as a fade at the beginning of the week, but I'm going to have to check on his ownership come after this. So again, guys, we're going to be posting those updates to the Patreon this afternoon. So if you guys want to see what I end up doing with Hughes, make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you check out the updated post that I post in the afternoon. Jonathan Vegas here, $8,900. It was a core play of mine, right? He's a bomber. Somebody who's going to be able to take advantage of these par fives here. Some of them are relatively long. Also, somebody who's been a #1 course fit rank. So go over here. No, wait, no, man, it changed. He's a top 5 recent form rank. Okay. That's what we were talking about in our video. But at the beginning of the week, my custom modeling was obviously a little bit different. We've tweaked things to go for the harder conditions. So with the harder conditions, you can see he's not quite as good of a recent form rank, not quite as good of a course fit rank, but still top 15, right? That's good there, $8,900. Still top 5 recent form rank. So obviously not the best bent grass putter. He's not a good putter on any surface. So that's not necessarily alarming right there. The ownership is inflated, right? So because we've changed our modeling, because we're expecting a little bit more of a difficult golf course here, I don't know. We're going to have to think about that because nearly 18% ownership for somebody who isn't a slam dunk play anymore becomes a little bit more of a fade situation. So we're gonna have to keep an eye on that. My next run of ownership, if he's closer to 19, 20% owned, will be a fade. If he's closer to 16, 17% ownership like he's at right now, he'll remain a play. So that's somebody we're also going to have to keep an eye on. Again, at the beginning of the week, he just modeled a little bit differently, right? We were looking at birdie or better percentage a little bit more. We were taking a little bit more of a harder look at these bomber types. Now it's a little bit more about the guys that are precise and that are good on these hard golf courses. So CT Pan is chalk for whatever reason. I don't understand it. He's going to be a fade for me at that type of ownership. We're gonna have to see the next run of ownership that we have here. But 17.3%, you guys can see that right there. That's entirely too high. Carlos Ortiz at 12.35% ownership. It's slightly more intriguing because he's actually a good putter. So he'd be the first truly good putter in this entire range here that you'd be considering, maybe except for somebody like Maverick Healy. The only issue with Carlos Ortiz is that he doesn't tend to do very well on bent grass, right? You can see he's a loser on the surface. Nearly a third of a stroke per round on bent grass. That is not good to see. He's also garnering some ownership. So for right now, he's a fade. Yeah, he'll probably remain a fade as well. You know, somebody who's obviously a good putter. He's the only good putter in this range you'd even want to consider. Charlie Hoffman right now, he's definitely going to be a little bit more chalky than I'd like. If this was going to be a birdie fest, he'd be an almost must play. He's one of the highest birdie or better percentage players in the world. He tends to do good at places like the Waste Management Open, where you're going to go out there, you're going to make a ton of birdies. You're also going to give a few strokes back to the field. So if we take a look at his course fit ranking, he's a top 10 course fit ranking. Recent form, he kind of fell off. He was very good in the middle of last year. Was on a run of golf where I believe he didn't miss a cut for like 10, 15 golf tournaments. He might even still be on that streak for all I know. I haven't really looked at his finishes of late, but he hasn't posted any top fives. That's the issue, right? Is Charlie Hoffman, he may be Mr. Consistency, but we haven't seen that top end upside. So at 14% ownership, he's probably not going to make my field. Obviously, the course fits there. That's a little bit intriguing to me. We'll have to see. He's somebody who we haven't decided on. We have him down as a blank right now. I'm leaning towards not playing him because of the ownership. But again, if we come in with this next set of ownership here and people like Johnny Vegas become mega chalk, people like CT Pan get even more chalky, Hoffman's going to be a little bit overlooked. He's going to come in closer to 10% ownership. So we'll have to see on that. It's getting close there on the ownership number. Lanto Griffin is somebody I definitely like playing for this week. $8,400. Somebody who's good on bent grass. He's good at hard golf courses. He's always grinds out golf shots. Maybe not the best around the green player. He tends to lead a lot of strokes right there. So with these small greens, it's a little bit of a concern for me. You can see he's a top 15 stat fit rank, and you're $8,400. That's more than enough value, at least in my opinion. He's single digit owned. He's not going completely overlooked by any means, but I don't hate that. Adam Schenk actually played here in 2019. So dropping birdies actually let me know that in a comment on one of my other videos. Actually finished here in the top 25. So Adam Schenk at $8,200 has definitely at least a lot more familiarity with this golf course than a lot of his peers. Same thing with Ryan Palmer. I believe he finished top 15 that year as well. Just off the top of my head, it might even been better than that. I know Sungjae finished top 3. He ended up withdrawing. Obviously, Hideki Matsuyama top 3 as well. So anyways, Adam Schenk, really good on bent grass. You can see he has a much smaller sample size than somebody like Ricky Fowler, than a lot of the other people on this list, but over half a stroke gain per round on bent grass. Also really good recent form rank. You can see he's there at 15. In terms of a course fit rank, number 19 in the field. So Adam Schenk, definitely somebody I am playing this week. He's definitely a little bit more expensive than people want to go to. That's why he's coming in at single digit ownership. But here in an invitational field, that is a very good number. I'm not sure what to do with Chris Kirk. You can see he models really well, and I didn't expect that. So Chris Kirk, expect him to be a little bit more of a plotter. He's accurate, high birdie or better percentage player. Not typically very good with his irons. I mean, at least from a narrative standpoint, you don't look at Chris Kirk and go, wow, great iron player, stripes him. But comes in as a top 15 course fit rank, and a top 20 recent form rank. And at $8,100, that's a very good value. It's a very balanced play as well. So he's definitely garnering ownership. I think it's just because of the modeling, right? A lot of people out there, they're smart people. We're not using the same type of modeling, but at least looking at similar numbers. Obviously, I'm relying heavily on approach play this week, so it's not rocket science. I don't know. I have to figure that out because he's a good play, but again, everyone's there. People are getting very sharp, especially with the ownership. So when we do this next run, I do expect that he'll make my pool just because he is such a good play in terms of the metrics. But again, that 12.7% ownership, at least at first, kind of put me off. But I think I'm willing to stomach that just because the play's so sound. I don't know what to do with Matt Wallace. I played him last week, but he was also $6,700, right? He was a huge difference in price. Now he's $8,000. We have people priced around him that I really like. Adam Schenk, Chris Kirk, Luke List that we're going to get to here in a second. Even though he's very lowly owned, perhaps that's for good reason, right? We haven't seen good form from him in quite some time. I actually saw on one of his Instagram stories of late, he was like joking about how bad his game is. And normally, while I think that'd be funny, you'd be like, oh, well, he's brushing it off. These golfers, like, if they're not completely confident, that's a fucking problem. Like, they have to be extremely confident in their abilities. They're some of the most confident people in the entire world, period. So for any of them to be showing weakness like that, that's extremely, extremely, extremely alarming. I know for me, if I lose confidence in my putter, I literally cannot make a putt. It's impossible. At least it feels impossible, and I won't make a birdie for months at a time. It's just, you don't want that type of confidence problems. Again, I'm not a professional golfer, not even close to it. I'm like a 10 handicap at best. But at the same time, I've played enough golf to understand that confidence is a thing. Let's talk about Luke List. On shots gained bent, he's horrible. He's also really good at golf courses where no one can make putts, just an atrocious putter. We saw that at the Wells Fargo Championship over there at Quail Hollow. We have a ton of undulation on those greens, even elevation changes on those greens. And he ended up gaining strokes putting on those greens. So even though it's bent grass, we also had bent grass up there at Quail Hollow. So I don't hate this. I don't hate the situation there at all. Garrett Cago, $7,800. He's going to be relatively low owned. You can see there, 6.3% ownership. Relatively good on bent grass. He has an insanely small sample size, so I don't want to look into that too much. And in terms of our modeling, models hate him, right? We haven't seen him play much of late. He hasn't gone out and done anything really since his win at the Palmetto Championship. The reason why he's a play for me, it's extremely simple. The guy can come out and win his first ever PGA Tour start. He's somebody who wins in nearly 28% of his international starts. That's on the European Tour. This kid's a stud. I mean, the guy knows how to win golf tournaments. There's a skill to going out and winning golf tournaments that not everyone possesses. I mean, he has more wins on the European Tour than Matt Wallace does. And the kid's like 21, 22 years old. That should tell you everything you need to know about him. He's somebody who, at every single level of golf that he's played in, has excelled. I don't think there's any bad things I can say about his game, other than it looks ugly. He's somebody who is not accurate off the tee. He doesn't hit it very far. He doesn't look very good with his irons. Hell, around the green and putting, I mean, obviously that's where he makes his hay. But it doesn't look special. He's not going out there hitting flop shots like Phil Mickelson, 50 yards in the air. He just executes better than everyone else. It's hard to even explain with his shots gained metrics. When we look at Higo, obviously in the European Tour, they don't have typical shots gained metrics, but you look at his like up and down numbers, you look at his greens in regulation, especially his off the tee numbers, they're ugly. Like, they look horrible, but the guy just consistently coming in, putting up huge finishes, consistently going out there, winning golf tournaments. That's extremely impressive. He's somebody I'll play almost blindly until I'm proven otherwise. I mean, he's made a lot of cuts of late. Hasn't really done anything with them. I definitely think he's a sleeping giant out there, though. Harry Higgs is chalk for some reason. I'm not playing him. I mean, sure, he's looked good in terms of recent form, right? He's coming in with good form, but take a look at the 20 golf tournaments before that, and then come back to me and tell me if you're still confident in playing Harry Higgs. Brendan Grace, anytime you have a hard golf tournament, anytime you're dealing with windy conditions, he's going to pop up in your modeling. So I didn't have him down as a yes. He's definitely going to be in my poll going into this afternoon, though, especially that we know it's going to be windy. We know it could be even extremely windy at times this weekend. Brendan Grace, low ball flight. We've seen him do well at the Open Championship in the past. Obviously has the best round ever at, was it Royal Birkdale? The one Open Championship where he shot the 62. Like, just ridiculous round. That was in extremely windy conditions where nobody saw that kind of thing happening. So Brendan Grace, I like him in these tough conditions. Brendan Todd, very good on bent grass. You see 0.61 shots gained per round on it. Modeling doesn't love him at all, right? He's in very average play, but at $7,400, that's right about par, right? You know, we're dealing with players that are going to be right around the number 30 ranked price golfer in the field. So at single digit ownership, you could do a whole lot worse than that. This is a short golf course. It's worth noting as well. It's a golf course that's just over 7,000 yards, and at the most, it's going to play 7,100 yards. So typically, Brendan Todd gets a little bit of a penalty for not being one of the longer players on tour, but not necessarily so much this week. Speaking of players that get a penalty off the tee, Henrik Norlander is probably my least favorite golfer in the world. We'll leave it at that. I'm not playing him this week because I dislike him. Yeah, I don't want to talk about why. I just don't like him. Sebastian Munoz, $7,300. So recent form rank, you can see he's not coming with good form at all, but that should be a good thing with Munoz. And if you take a look at when Munoz has posted top fives in the past, it's been completely out of nowhere. He's coming in on multiple missed cut streaks, goes out there and just storms fields. So Sebastian Munoz, he's like the one guy on tour that I don't hold bad form against, just because you never know when it's coming. We just have to embrace that with Munoz at this point. He's good on bent grass. That's a good sign to see right there. If we take a look at his long-term course fit, he's a top 10 stat fit. So if there's ever going to be a golf course where this guy's going to come out here and turn it around, it's here. And the guy that was last week was Ricky Fowler, and Ricky Fowler top 3. Again, we'll leave it at that. I think he's a great play this week. Matt Jones, he's going to be chalky, but I really like the play, especially in the wind. Matt Jones, if you guys remember, shot 7 under at the Honda Classic this year. That was in extremely windy conditions. I was at that golf tournament, obviously right down the road. It was 25, 30 mile an hour winds. And I remember showing up in the afternoon. I saw the weather that morning. It was like everyone was getting out to like +2, +3 starts. I was like, oh, wow. PGA National is actually playing difficult for once. And then I get there right around midday. It was 12 o'clock, and the first scoreboard comes up, and it's just Matt Jones 7 under. I believe did he get to 8 under? I don't even remember off the top of my head. It was just so ridiculous. You show up, he's like 7 under, and then the next people on the board are like 2 under. That's how good he is in these windy conditions. He's from Australia. He's from the part of Australia, I can't think of the name off the top of my head, where it's super windy, where it's in the desert near Melbourne, near Royal Melbourne. I really like him. You see he's good on bent grass as well. So obviously down at PGA National, that was Bermuda grass. That's when he went off, but even better on bent grass. So I like to see that as well. He's just a good player in general too. Obviously somebody who's won on the PGA Tour. In terms of recent form, you're not going to see it. In terms of course fit, you're not going to see it, but we don't have wind baked into this at the same time. So let's keep going down here, guys. Brendan Steele, I talked about in my value plays video. So if you guys want a full breakdown on that, make sure to go ahead and watch that. He's better at golf courses that aren't as long. Also somebody who's just a relatively good player at hard golf courses. So don't hate that. Tom Hoagie was one of my favorite plays at the beginning of the week. Same thing with Doug Gim. Ball strikers. Doug Gim is a lot better on bent grass than he is on other surfaces. So you can see he still loses shots gained on bent grass. But if you take a look at his putting splits on every other surface, they're like 4/10 of a shots gained lost per round, or half a stroke lost per round, that type of thing. Not what you want to see there. Obviously, much better on the bent grass surface, though. If you take a look at how he's fitting in terms of a course fit, he was somebody who was a course fit at the beginning of the week, 21st. Recent form hasn't really been there. He hasn't put up any good finishes, but I think it's definitely a good week for him to try and bounce back. So even at 13% ownership, I'm going to have plenty of them. Tom Hoagie, he's good in recent form rank, decent in terms of a course fit rank. He's not jumping off the boards or anything like that. He's not top 15 in either category, but extremely solid. Somebody who's going to keep the ball in play. He's not the longest player on tour, but extremely accurate off the tee. He loses strokes off the tee, but that's just his distance. He's extremely accurate. If he can bring the approach play this week, I think he can take out a golf course that's the short. Troy Merritt, we talked about on my values video earlier on this week. Troy Merritt, somebody who's also played here before. He put up that top 25 finish there in 2019, so has some familiarity with the golf course. Roger Sloan, also a value play. Don't want to go into too much detail there, but single digit owned, had very good form there at the end of last season, was doing it with accuracy off the tee, with scorching hot with his irons, and made a ton of putts, particularly on bent grass surfaces. So I like going there as a little bit of a bounce back spot. He had a rough last couple weeks. Andrew Putnam, for some reason, is garnering a lot more ownership than I expected him to. Perhaps it's splits on bent grass that people are drawn to, but horrible course fit, right? Not long off the tee, not good on approach. Is a little bit more of a birdie or better percentage player, right? Not as safe. I won't be playing him. Sam Ryder, he's been featured on the channel here quite a few times at this point. $6,700, a little bit more expensive than I'd like, but when we take a look at his model rankings, they're right around average. You like to see decent on bent grass, low owned. So in this range, if you have a guy who's pretty much average across the board, but he's low owned, he's going to be a plus EV play in terms of a value play, at least in a GPP format, right? So these are for GPPs. He's not a cash play by any means, but for a flyer in a large field tournament, definitely think that he's well worth the risk. Pierre Malnati, it's just the time of year where Malnati is going to go out. He's going to post a top 5 at some point. It happens every single year. It hasn't happened to this point. I mean, he's played very well. At the Sanderson Farms, he started off really rough, but ended up turning it around. You see he's good on bent grass. He's one of the shorter hitters on tour. So kind of somebody like Matt Jones, who isn't one of those longer players, but at these shorter tracks can kind of go and get it done. All right, so we're starting to get into where we're going to get into some of these Japanese players. And we got a question in the chat we'll get to, and then I'll say if there's any of you guys who want to know more information about, I can bring up shots gained numbers, that kind of thing. We can try and do deep dive on them if you want, but just go ahead and let me know who that's going to be. So isn't Palmer a good win player? A little behind the internet, took a shit. So I'd have to check the metrics, right? So it's not like a lot of these win players, they're just analytical things that I've noticed, right? I've been watching golf for quite some time now. As pretty much everyone watching this has, you're going to know some of the guys off the top of your head that you've seen play well in the wind. And for me, Palmer, I haven't noticed that off the top of my head, but I can look into it, right? He's obviously been on tour for a retarded long time now. So if we take a look at his apex height stats and we do an average over the years, I'll probably be able to get a good idea of what his actual apex height is. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll get an idea of whether he's a lower ball flight player. And then I'm going to take a look at some of the golf tournaments over the years that we've known have just been windy as shit, right? So like Honda Classic, Corrales, Putacana, that kind of thing. Anytime he's played in those, and I'll see how he did. So I'll get back to you on that. I'll comment here on this video what I find on that. Just don't want to let you know something off the top of the head that I don't know myself. So let's hop back in the player pool. And again, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to go ahead and put them down in the chat there. So Chan Kim's played on tour a bunch. You've seen him like over and over again, whether it's been as a Monday qualifier, whether it's been as a sponsorship exemption. But so you can see recent form rank. The reason why it's so good is just because the last 4 times we've seen him, he's been all right. But if you take a look at his long-term form, horse fit ranking, it's dog shit, right? So it's like, do we trust the long-term numbers or do we trust what we've seen of late? But the thing is, it hasn't been any time recent, right? So it's the last quote unquote 24 rounds that I used for my recent form, but those 24 rounds are spread over like multiple years. So for me, I'm probably not playing him this week. It's not somebody that I have a very good read on. There's a few other people in the industry that have talked about him as a potential play just because he's going to be extremely low owned. You see $6,500. A lot of these other unknown commodities are a little bit cheaper. So that's the reason for that there. By the way, where is Kanaya? So we passed Kanaya. I want to talk about Kanaya. So we're going to go back up the board a little bit. We skipped over somebody that I really wanted to talk about. So Takumi Kanaya is probably like the sleeper pick of the century. So this guy, he's played in multiple major championships. Actually, it's Imahira that we want to talk about too here. He's made the cut before. He's also just been a prolific winner internationally. So kind of like Garrick Higo, you got to have that winning trait. You got to be able to go out there, just take a golf tournament by the balls and take that thing to town. And Kanaya has shown the ability to do that. I don't have many metrics on him. You can see that we have him down for 0.23 shots gained putting on bent grass per round. I have no idea how many rounds of sample size that is. That could be like 1 or 2 rounds at most. So I want to take that with a grain of salt, obviously. But Kanaya, he's somebody who could end up making my poll. I had him down as a no as a knee-jerk reaction, but as I did more and more of a deep dive into some of these Japan Tour players, and I only did it on a few of them that I felt were actually warranted the time, Kanaya is actually somebody I'd consider playing. Imahira is also somebody I'd consider playing, so I want to skip down to here. He made the cut at the U.S. Open last year, and I believe the PGA Championship. It was for 2 major championships. He ended up making the cut, which obviously a lot of people weren't expecting. If we take a look at his model rankings, they're obviously going to be dog shit because the only time we've seen him is at major championships. He made the cut each time and then completely fell off the board. It was kind of like he made the cut at the U.S. Open at +5, ended up shooting like +17 or something like that by the end of the week. But to make the cut at a major championship in your first ever American performance is extremely impressive. I mean, it's the best fields in golf. I don't have to tell you some of the guys that missed the cut at those events. We had superstars missing the cut left and right, both of them. So that was a no at the beginning of the week. So kind of like Kanaya, it was like a knee-jerk reaction. It was like, I can't play this guy. I don't know enough about him. But as I've looked into him, I don't hate it, especially at 2% ownership. I play him in 3 or 4 lineups, get 4, maybe 5% ownership on him, and that is more than enough to leverage the field. So I'm going to be doing that this week. Again, we've seen him make the cut at much harder fields, and there's no cut this week. We're dealing with a much softer field, so God knows what he's capable of going out and doing. Could very well have a very good week. See, is there anyone here I missed? Matthew Neesmith. He's good at shorter golf courses. We'll say that much. He's been good at the Wyndham. He's been good at the RBC Heritage, that kind of thing. Nearly won the Heritage one year, so I don't hate that. Same thing with Kodaira, right? I forget what golf tournament he won. Shit. He won me a bunch of money at that golf tournament, but it was one of the shorter. Was it the Heritage? I don't know. If anyone remembers the golf tournament that Kodaira won, let me know. He ended up winning me a shit ton of money there. Obviously, shorter hitter, right? Relatively accurate. You can see on bent grass is meh, right? But he's typically a horrible putter, typically losing about half a stroke per round. On bent grass is a little bit closer to neutral. In the middle of last year, he got on a really good run. He went on about 3 to 4 golf tournaments where he was posting top 25 finishes, was getting over a stroke per round on bent grass, and was somebody that I was hammering week in and week out just because we saw a lot of that form. He was really good on bent grass for whatever reason. I don't hate going back to him, right? Just because we saw that type of form recently. There's a few other guys in this range I like a little bit more, so we'll get to them right now. First of all, Scott Vincent, who is a sponsorship exemption this week. He's somebody who was given the spot just based on his potential alone. I mean, we've seen this guy play before. I forget the exact last event he played. I should probably go ahead and look that up. But he came out, he made a cut. He's somebody that nobody wanted to play. It's like, who the hell is this Scott Vincent guy? I believe he was within a shot or two of the lead after the first round, ended up making the cut, kind of fell off after that. But that's why he's coming in as a good course fit rank, right? The only rounds that we really have on him are good. You can see recent form over here, 0.00. And just because in the time range I'm using for those last 44 rounds, we haven't seen him. So even though he's getting nearly a stroke per round on bent grass, we have to take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, right? I'm taking a risk on him this week. Anytime we see some of these players that get sponsorship exemptions just based on their potential alone, they could be borderline superstars come the future. Sean Norris is another one in this range. I forget his price here. Actually, did he? Oh, yeah, I forgot. I don't have Sean Norris. So Sean Norris, if anyone could tell me in chat his price, I don't have him on my spreadsheet right now. He's going to be right around the $6,400 mark. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and look it up on my phone right now for you guys. He got added to the field when Paul Casey came out. He's a similar type player. So he's also from South Africa. He's also somebody who is much better in terms of his official world golf ranking than he is any other metric you can look at. So same thing with somebody like Vincent. He's a top 125 player in the world, believe it or not. So if the official world golf rankings decided who was on the PGA Tour, he would be a PGA Tour member. Same thing with Sean Norris. Let me see how much he costs. So Sean Norris is $6,000. Okay, so that's even better. So he's the dead minimum. He was added late to the field, obviously. He's from South Africa. He's posted out of his last 3 events in the European Tour. One was a 14th, one was a 5th place finish, and then one was 129th. He missed the cut. So I've shown a lot of pedigree on that tour. And let me go ahead and find the thing with Vincent, because it was very notable where he did that. Oh, it was at the Olympics. Shit, okay. I remember now. He played for the Olympics. He was that young South African that everyone was like, who the hell is this guy? Not South African. He's from Zimbabwe. Now I remember what was so weird about it. I believe he was born in America, but he's internationally from Zimbabwe or something weird. I remember them talking about that now, but at the Olympics, he got off to that super hot start. He was within 1 or 2 shots of the lead. He was very good in day 2 and then kind of fell off. Obviously, ended up finishing in the middle of the pack there at 14th. But for him to do that in his first ever appearance internationally, that's good. I mean, that field, by the way, very underrated, right? We had some guys on that field that we kind of had never seen before, but like Scott Velaki for that kind of means. But now on the European Tour, the guy's playing extremely well. So a lot of the guys in that field, again, very underrated. We can talk about a few other Olympians. So Hoshino, Rikoya Hoshino, he played over at the Olympics. He looked pretty good, right? Obviously, he's a hometown guy, somebody who made this on the Japan Tour type of exemption. So Hoshino, I don't hate going to. He's probably one of the highest pedigree players coming out of that tour that we're going to see. Kyle Stanley, if you guys saw my core plays video, you guys know I like ball striking here. Obviously, going to keep himself out of a lot of trouble. Top 10 recent form rank, decent course fit rank, right? So I like his course fit in terms of ball striking. I'm saying it's a little bit underrated there. Sung Kang garnering 9.2% ownership, which to me is a little bit bonkers. He was somebody I really like as a play just because he's been hot of late. We've seen a couple 62, 63s, that kind of thing. And at golf courses where we didn't expect to see a 9 or a 10 under round. So that's really good to see. Anytime you have a guy playing with that type of volatility, he's just not very good at bent grass, and he's nearly 10% owned. So I'm going to be running my ownership projections right after this live stream here. Obviously going to update it. If he's coming in closer to 10.5%, 11% ownership, he's going to be a fade. I mean, anytime you have a guy at $6,300 garnering any type of ownership like that, it's almost an automatic fade. I mean, these guys are just inconsistent by nature, unless it's somebody like Sam Burns at the Open Championship, right? So if you guys don't remember, Sam Burns this year at the Open Championship was $6,300, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And guess what ownership he came in at? It was like 11% ownership, which is just absolutely bonkers. He was completely unowned. It made no sense. I guess people just, the casuals especially, just weren't scrolling down to the bottom and clicking in his name. Somebody like Sung Kang, if he's 9 or 10% owned, you're telling me he's the same pedigree player as Sam Burns? Get the fuck out of here. You're full of shit, right? So Sung Kang there at $6,300. We're going to have to check the ownership. He was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction play at the beginning of the week, but now that we have these ownership numbers in here, I'm not quite as sold anymore. What about Kramer Hickok? So Kramer Hickok at $6,300. Horrible metrics in terms of form. 68th course fit, one of the worst in the field. One of the worst in terms of recent form rank. But if we take a look at his run last year, so that was at TPC River Highlands, golf tournaments around that, and all those are golf courses that I highly correlate to what we're going to see this week. You know, shorter golf courses with plenty of water in play. You have to be accurate off the tee. Bent grass greens, relatively fast undulating greens as well. So Kramer Hickok made most of his work happen last year at that point of the year. You know, you're talking 3M Open, you're talking Traveler Championship, all those kind of golf courses where they were so thin. You know, we had golf courses that were just correlated week after week after week at that time of the year, the whole way even to the 3M Open. I mean, just all very similar golf courses. We're going to see a very similar track to that here. Let's see. Anyone else we really want to talk about here? All right, let's go to the bottom of the board just because we can. Well, then we'll work our way up. We'll talk about a few of the Japanese tour guys that I know at least a little bit about, just because I know you guys will find it entertaining at the very least. Wesley Bryan at $6,000. You see he's great on bent grass. So he's decent in terms of course fit. And to me, that was insane when I saw it. I was like, wait, he's a good course fit? I was like, what do you mean? Wesley Bryan? We haven't seen this guy in forever. Like, this guy hardly ever plays. He's on a special injury exemption, that kind of thing, like where you get a certain amount of starts if you're injured. He's good off the tee, right? He's accurate, but he hits the ball about 280 yards. So we're at a golf course that's only 7,000 yards, where we're not really looking at off the tee distance. That's definitely a check in Wesley Bryan's book. He's a great bent grass putter. Definitely a check into his book. This guy's a trick shot specialist. I don't know if you guys know this. Wesley Bryan, before he was a PGA Tour player, he was making like Instagram videos, YouTube videos with trick shots and stuff like that. It's what he did for a living. He would go around like doing shows and whatnot. So the guy's extremely creative. So anytime we get him on undulating surfaces, places where you can use crazy shots around the green, like flop shots or spinning shots and taking them off ledges into bowls and holes and that kind of thing, he gets a huge boost. That's what he did for a living for quite some time. And I'm expecting him to put on a little bit of a show. I don't understand why he's $6,000. I'd be playing him even if he's closer to $7,000. I mean, hell, the guy hasn't been in very good form. I mean, we haven't seen him that much of late at all. I mean, the guy just hasn't been playing. but when he's played, he's been impressive. So for me, a lot of people in this field aren't even going to know who Wesley Bryan is because he just hasn't played in a very long time, especially anybody new to golf DFS, but he's been around for quite some time. He's actually had some impressive performances over his career. So if you're somebody that's new, don't be scared off of him. That is a misprice there at $6,000. That doesn't make much sense to me. Tyler McCumber, he's at very least a PGA Tour player. That's why he's a play in this range when we compare him to the guys around him. He's also somebody who played well at TPC Sawgrass. So that's obviously a golf course where you got to be accurate off the tee. You have plenty of water in play, but also really complex greens. I was at that PGA Championship. I remember seeing McCumber's name out there. I don't even know how he made the PGA Championship field. That was what I was mind fucked about. I was like, this is the greatest field in golf, and we have this McCumber idiot out here. It's like, how did he qualify? So I followed him for a few holes, and he birdied all three of them. He ended up being in like 10th place at that part of the golf tournament. I was like, all right, well, maybe I should start paying attention to this guy. So McCumber, he's not a sexy name by any means, but I'm playing him. Again, he's a PGA Tour player here. Let's go through some of these Japan Tour guys. Oh, ouch. There's like, ouch, guys. I'm not playing any of them, as you can tell. So they're all no's for me. So these ones here at the bottom, these are the qualifiers. These three for the Bridgestone Invitational. That was a one-off golf tournament that they have over there on the Japan Tour. It's actually on this golf course. And if you end up finishing in the top three, you automatically qualify for the event. So Aoya, Mita, and Sujiyama, I believe those were the three for the Bridgestone Invitational. And I guess if you're going to play anybody down low, right, from the Japan Tour, you might want to play those three just because they played well at this golf course before. And we know that they have because they finished in the top three of that qualifier. We'll leave it at that, right? I don't know anything about their games, right? They don't have shots gained metrics for these guys. They don't, at least I'm sure they televise the Japan Tour events in Japan, but it's not like we're able to access that over here very easily. And for me to go and do tape study on these guys would be a little bit ridiculous. So we're not doing that. I'm not going to pretend like I know their games. This Kotoka, Nanani, Hitsutune, all of these guys up here, they're the top 7 in the Japan Tour rankings. So that was one of the other ways you could qualify for this event. There were 3 from the Bridgestone Invitational. There were 7 from the top of the Japan Tour. Obviously, Bill Haas is not from Japan Tour. He was a sponsorship exemption, I believe. And then Kinoshita, Usuke, Hoshino, Higa, Hanaya, and Imahira, all of those guys were sponsorship exemptions. A few other sponsorship exemptions, we had Scott Vincent, and then Scott Norris. Sean Norris was just an alternate. So that's how all these guys got in. Again, I guess if you really feel like you need to play one of these guys from the Japan Tour, you just have a feeling about it, play one of those guys at the bottom at $6,000. These guys that are just normal Japan Tour players, well, I'm sure that they're very quality players, people that are much better players than we're giving them credit for, right? I mean, anytime you're playing professional golf, you have to be an excellent player. You're not going to make it anywhere in the world without being an excellent ball striker, just an excellent gamer in general. With that being said, I'm not going to be playing them because I have no idea of understanding their games, right? I have no idea what they're good at. They could be bomb and gouge type players. They could just be extremely aggressive birdie percenters players, or they could be short game specialists. We'd have no way of telling unless we went into a deep tape study or asked somebody that follows the Japan Tour or something like that. So that's why I'm sticking to these guys at the bottom, just because we know that they've played well at this golf course, and we have no information on these other guys. Hoshino, again, we saw him at the Olympics. I don't necessarily hate going there. Kinoshita apparently has been really good too. He has a few wins on that tour. So a lot of these other guys here, they don't have wins on the Japan Tour. Kinoshita has at least one internationally, so that's important to note. Higa's played on the PGA Tour a bunch and looks like complete dog shit, so I'm not going to be playing Higa, even if he is one of the higher pedigree guys from that tour. So yeah, that's the player pool, guys. What we're going to do now is I'm going to talk about a few game theory notes. So we're going to talk about the weather. We'll talk about a few of the stacks that I'll be using. Just because the weather could get really bad, right? So we want to be stacking some of these guys that are good in wind, that kind of thing. And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and put them down in chat, because after we're done with the strategy section, we're going to go ahead and end this to get on with our day. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about a little bit of the stacks that I'll be using. So anytime we get really windy conditions, I always consider stacking 3 to 4 players in a lineup that are good in wind. And a few of my key pieces for that, first and foremost, going to be Matt Jones. Already talked about how good he was at the Honda Classic. He's been good at the Honda Classic even before that in the past in windy conditions. He's been good elsewhere in wind. He's definitely a prime candidate for those type of stacks. Let's see. Let's talk about a guy up top that would be stacking. So obviously Joaquin Niemann. We already talked about how he flights his wedges. Like going there at $9,900. If I'm going to spend up for anybody trying to stack or anything like that, it's probably going to be him. Do I hate going to Grillo? Grillo's very good in wind. Carlos Ortiz, you'd expect the same thing. Brandon Grace, right? So if we're talking core pieces, it'd probably be Matt Jones, Brandon Grace, and Joaquin Niemann. Those would be the three main guys I'd like to put in those stacks. You could mix in a couple of those other guys there. Anyone super cheap that's good in wind. Let's see. Not that I know of the top of my head. I'd have to look at their apex heights. Yeah, none of these guys are known for being really good wind players or anything like that. If I had to guess, Wesley Bryan, just because he's going to be able to manipulate his golf flight very well. He's very good at flighting the ball high, keeping it low, that kind of thing. So I'm sure consistently he's probably one of the higher ball flight players, just because if you have the ability to elevate your golf ball, more often than not, that's going to be advantageous. But Wesley Bryan, again, he's a trick shot specialist. So we know he's able to hit a stinger. We know he's able to keep the ball low, that kind of thing. And we've seen that from him in the past. By the way, if you look up Wesley Bryan escape shots, recovery shots on YouTube, if you guys just want to laugh or you guys want to be entertained, the guy's done some crazy shit in his lifetime, we'll say that. And especially on the tour. So it's not just like for him and his like showboating and that kind of thing. He's hit some crazy tour shots that are just going to be mind-boggling. So go ahead and watch that if you haven't already. I highly recommend that. A few other guys I'm going to here that I'm going to be playing today that just I wanted to go over just one or two more times. Ricky Fowler, right? I've gone really huge on him. Just tee to green was great last week. Very good on these bent grass greens. Good on a lot of these undulating surfaces. Same thing with Will Zalatoris, right? Somebody who's very good at the Masters. We saw him do really well at Winged Foot, so I'll be going there as well. Who else is really good on these undulating surfaces? Mackenzie Hughes, right? We've seen him do really well at hard golf courses in the past. And Keegan Bradley, guys, I'm going to put him down as a yes. So I know we talked about it before. I was going to try and squeeze him in. I'm going to do whatever I can to squeeze him in. Just because anytime you have a golf course where you can't make putts, the guy ends up coming through. He has that kind of ability. He's just a dog shit putter 99% of the time. But when he brings it, ends up bringing it together. So that's all we're going to do for the live stream this week, guys. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you guys have winning, if that's changed or anything like that. For me, I'm going to say Will Zalatoris. I have changed. At first beginning of the week, I definitely thought it was going to be Hideki, but I'm on Willie Z now, though. So go ahead and let me know. But until next time, guys, good luck with all of your lineups for this week, and I'll see you.